Hi, this is the story of the ghost of Mary Webb. The events surrounding the story are true. In 1644, Cromwell's parliamentary forces laid siege to Wythenshawe Hall. It was something we put together for a bit of fun a few years ago for Halloween, but it's such a great story that it's something we'd like to do again with some reenactments. I added a few AI scenes to spice it up a bit.
Oliver Cromwell. His statue stands defiantly outside Wythenshawe Hall. In the winter of 1643, his parliamentary forces laid siege to this former manor house. This 16th century timber-framed house in Wythenshawe is about 5 miles south of Manchester city centre in Wythenshawe Park. Built for Robert Tatton, it was home to the Tatton family for almost 400 years. Some of its historic residents have never left here. Many have been seen roaming the grounds and rooms of this splendid manor house. Monks, visible only from the knees up, wander through the grounds. At the back of the hall in the walled garden is the pet cemetery, where Patch, the Tatton family dog, is buried and supposedly rises from his grave at times. But its most famous occupant is the ghost of Mary Webb. Mary Webb was a young woman brought up by the Tattons. Mary remained here as a maidservant for the rest of her short life. Robert Tatton was the master of this fine estate. Robert's father, William Tatton, drowned trying to cross the River Mersey in 1617. Robert was only 10 years old. Being the only male heir, Robert inherited his father's estate in Wythenshawe, but as a minor he was made a ward of the king, Charles I, until he came of age. Robert remained loyal to the king, and in the winter of 1643, his loyalty was put to the test. From 1642 to 1651, England was engaged in a civil war between the parliamentarian Roundheads and the Royalist Cavaliers, a fight that pitted brother against brother and father against son. Lancashire was divided. Both sides frantically sought to lay their hands on arms and gunpowder. The Royalists seized the magazines at Lancaster, Preston, and Liverpool, but Manchester declared for Parliament and refused to hand over its 10 barrels to the Royalist forces. As the troubles increased, Robert Tatton started repairing the moat and reinforcing the Grand House. Robert recruited a small defense force of around 50 from his tenants and friends, and they prepared for war. The commander of the local parliamentarian forces in Cheshire, Colonel Robert Duckenfield, was ordered to seize Wythenshawe Hall and to remove anything of value that could be found. After ransacking the nearby village of Northenden, the Roundheads marched on and arrived at Wythenshawe Hall on the 21st of November, 1643. But taking the house was not going to be as easy as they had imagined. Captain Adams, second in command, led the small force of several dozen parliamentarians and laid siege upon the house. A ferocious battle ensued, with the defenders firing from windows and what cover they could find. The inexperienced force drove back the astonished parliamentarians, killing 2 as they retreated. When the smoke cleared, 6 of the defenders lay dead. One was the fiancé of Mary Webb. Robert Tatton called for a truce so the bodies could be taken to the church for proper services. Adams refused, and the defenders of Wythenshawe Hall were forced to bury them in the garden behind the house. Mary was heartbroken and vowed revenge. The siege turned into a standoff, and the Roundheads determined to wait until the Tattons ran out of food and water. 3 months of cold winter dragged on. Whether through determination or fate, on the 25th of February, Mary saw her chance to avenge her fiancé's death. While looking through an upstairs window, She saw Captain Adams sitting on a wall near the house. Inflamed with grief and anger, Mary slipped a musket under her cloak and went outside. Taking careful aim, she sent Adams to meet his maker. This may have been the last straw for the parliamentarians. 2 days later, on the 27th of February, 1644, the parliamentarians brought 2 cannons from Manchester, with which they reduced the hall. One cannonball entered by the drawing room window and smashed the wood carving on the opposite wall. By then, the defenders had exhausted their ammunition and had very little food left. Mary escaped over the marshland and ditches, but according to local legend, was drowned in a ditch. From that day to this, she is reportedly seen walking the park at night. It's said she protects the hall. In certain rooms, it can feel icy cold. It can sometimes feel like someone standing behind you and will tap you on the shoulder. The chandelier which hangs in the hall has been seen moving. It isn't possible for anyone to touch it, and wind can't enter the room. It's suggested that it's Mary that swings the chandelier. She has since been known to appear just outside her former quarters, sobbing in a long white gown. A number of odd photos have been taken in the library, showing unexplained figures, orbs, and mists. It's said that Mary can be heard sobbing and walking frantically from room to room, trying to flee the soldiers and her oncoming fate.
If you saw our video last week, I was talking about using AI to add some historical type videos to these stories. Now, if you want to get involved and do some reenacting, and you think you'd make a good Mary Webb or a good Robert Tatton, I'd love for you to drop us a line and leave a comment below, because that would be great to do a reenactment of this story. It's a really great story. It was just something we put together quickly for a Halloween video a few years ago. But the story deserves telling, and it deserves better telling than what you've just seen. But barring that, as I mentioned last week, I want to use some AI in these stories. And it's challenging to get characters to look the same from scene to scene. But I found a way around it, and that is by using famous actors. And it's really interesting to see which famous actors the AI that I'm using knows. Sometimes it just generates random people. It doesn't know the actor I'm talking about. I wanted to use English actors in the story, of course, but it didn't recognize the names. I think it probably only knows like big Hollywood superstars, like Keanu Reeves, who was Robert Tatton in this video. And it's probably not the best casting choice for Robert Tatton. But Emma Watson, English actor, that was a good choice for Mary Webb, I thought, and that worked quite well. So if you have any suggestions, please leave a comment. I'd love to hear your suggestions of actors that I can try, and hopefully the AI can recognize them or knows who they are or can recreate their image in some way. When we made this story a few years ago, the hall, it wasn't open because there was a big fire there. Well, actually just right before we moved here. So the hall wasn't open for several years. They were fixing the damage from the fire. So it wasn't open for a long, long time. It opened a couple of years ago. So now we can get inside and hopefully do some reenactments of this story, or at least get some better video. If you want to help us out with the things we do here, go over to our website, wickedacorn.com, and you can become a member of the Brew Crew, and you can get one of our Manchester Bee mugs, and you can even get your name put in there, and they come in a whole bunch of different colors too. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.